Good morning, everybody, and happy Aloha Friday. Welcome to PSG of Mercer County. And of course, we celebrate Aloha Friday, or at least I like to get into the Aloha Friday spirit each Friday morning. And that's because Aloha Friday is Casual Friday in Hawaii. And I would love to be in Hawaii. We seem to just have a Hawaiian tropical storm overnight, so I think it worked out very nicely for us. And so in addition to being Aloha Friday, today is National Sugar Cookie Day. And if we were together and there was a landing, it's possible someone would have brought a sugar cookie and we would celebrate a landing. So we do like to celebrate landings and celebrate any good news. Hopefully you've had some good success, a little bit of good news. If you've landed, you're certainly welcome. Put some note in the chat or maybe just quickly raise your hand and get my attention. We'd love to know if you are a recent landee, other than Alex, the landing expert, who lands every day with people. But so when you land, hopefully you'll celebrate with sugar cookies, even if we're virtual. PSG of Mercer County, the professional service group of Mercer County, we are a group that is here for you. Anybody that is in any kind of career transition, it doesn't matter why you are in a career transition, it doesn't matter to us. It could be that the pandemic affected your last position and your company had to take a drastic reaction. Maybe they reorganized. That happened to me. I've been laid off twice due to corporate reorganizations. Or it could be a decision on your own. You have a personal need, take care of a family member or something else at home, or you've decided to focus your career in a new direction and needed to take full time to do that. We are here to provide the resources that will help you be more efficient and effective in your own job search. And so we do that with several things and several tools and resources that we have. We do have our LinkedIn group. It is called PSG of Mercer County. And so we invite you, if you are not yet a member of our group, in LinkedIn, go to the group section and search for PSG of Mercer County and press the join button so you can join our group. Our group has over 1,670 members now, so it's a very large group. Everyone in the group has been to at least one of our meetings, either in person or virtual, and that's kind of an unwritten rule or a requirement, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep the list collectors and the name collectors out, people that are just in the group to collect names for themselves and their own need. Our LinkedIn group is used for only really our members and people that are really interested in helping each other in job search. So in the section where you can post anything, you're welcome to post an introduction of yourself. You can put your elevator pitch. You can introduce yourselves to over 1,600 people right there. Maybe you'll grab somebody's attention. Also use it to post positions that you may hear about that are not right for you. We all receive those emails about that perfect position, but it's not a position for you. Copy and paste that into the section in LinkedIn in the group section so that you can put that post there. LinkedIn likes when we are active in LinkedIn. It really helps your profile and your visibility. And even if you don't have a post or a blog or something else of interest right now, what we encourage you to do is put some information that'll help others. And also what's nice about only being people that have been in job search is it's more likely that we as job seekers, at some point, we've been all job seekers, is that we're sensitive to helping people when asked. So if we do read a post asking for a little bit of help, do you know a so-and-so from a company, there's a good chance you'll get a response, whether you post it there or you reach out to those people directly. In addition, we have our website. Our website is more than a landing page. It is over 120 pages of content. It's a very robust website, psgofmercercounty.org. In our professional development tab, we've got menus or tabs on the top. We have a section called e-learning. We now have links to 69 e-learning websites. Now, not all of them are free, but a lot of them are or have free trials. Some of them have subscriptions, or some of them you just pay as you go for individual classes. It's always a good idea to remain current and active and continue learning. When you're in an interview and somebody asks, what have you done since your last position? Well, if you said, well, I've been looking full-time for a job, well, that's the truth, and that's, I guess, okay. But if you say, well, I've taken some courses or got a certification, if you show some other growth in your career, that's more positive. So certainly you may be able to find some good courses in our e-learning websites. So look at that page. You may get some good information right there. So for our ground rules today, very similar to what we've been doing. We do ask that you keep your microphones on mute when you otherwise don't have a need to speak with John or myself. But what we will ask you to do is, as you have questions, just alert us. Use the chat for questions, and you can either type the word question, and we're kind of encouraging that today. Type the word question, and either John or I will call on you, probably at the end of a slide, or at the very least, an end of a bullet point. John would like to address your questions, if you have any, as current as his topic and page that he's talking about. You know, he doesn't want you to have to wait until the end of the program to go back a few slides. And he'd like to engage us more directly. So if you have a question, type the word question in chat. It's the digital equivalent of raising your hand. And what I will do is I will monitor that and then call on you. If you'd prefer not to open your mic, you can type the word question followed by the text of your question. And then I'll just read that out loud. But we're trying to engage more of us today. If you'd like to do that, please do so, because you're welcome to. And the reason why I ask you to type the word question, there tend to be a lot of comments in chat. People introduce themselves. And when I see the word question, it helps stand out and pop. I don't want to miss your question, and that'll just help me see it. And I don't have to read through or accidentally miss it among all the other content that you have. Okay. And I'm just making John the presenter. And with that, now that we've got the ground rules, I'm just pleased this morning to welcome our speaker, John Cochran. John has been a highly successful executive in the strategic business development arena for over 30 years. In addition to his work in the nonprofit world, as well as the healthcare space, he has maintained a career coaching presence since 1992. He is also the founder of Merritt Walsh Associates, LLC, a strategy firm and the parent company of Corcoran Career Coaching. And he currently serves on the leadership team at D'Alessandro Inc., a consulting firm that raises performance for its nonprofit clients. John spent 13 years with the Pascack Valley Hospital. While at the hospital, John held the positions of Senior Vice President of External Relations, Chief Operating Officer, and Interim Chief Executive Officer, as well as President of the New Jersey Hospital Association Fundraising Executives. John is a graduate of William Paterson University and is a member of the Board of Directors of the Commerce and Industry Association of New Jersey. PSG of Mercer County is very pleased to welcome John Cochran.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Happy to be here. You know, I feel a little bit cheated. I agreed to the recording, but then you started the recording after what may be the most interesting topics that we discussed. We discussed Hawaiian shirts at funerals. We discussed Star Trek and Transformers, and then we talked about the Red Sox and teams. That was the most interesting. That's what I would have gotten the most out of it. And I'm trying to take these notes here. But next time that I speak, let's the dialogue between 9:45 and 10 o'clock. Let's put the recording on, because that's what I want. But thank you. Seriously, happy to be here. Let me just start out with a story about a guy who started his career working in retail at 15, and he was supposed to be 16 to get working papers. And when he asked about minimum wage, the store owner said to him, well, when you reach minimum age, I'll pay you minimum wage. You either want the job or not. So he took the job. A year later, he actually had another store see him and ask him if he was available. They had an opening. They used to see him around town. It was like an old-fashioned avenue. It wasn't a mall. It was old-fashioned avenue. And he went to work for them. And then the first year, they had these sidewalk sales, and he's working. And at the end of the second or third week there, he had amassed 60 hours of work. Now we're going back to the 70s, so that probably wouldn't even be considered today. But when he asked about time and a half for that extra 20 hours, the owner said, well, listen, you know, I could get one of the other kids to work, but you're a good worker and you want to work. If you don't want to work, you tell me how many hours you want. You want 20 hours? You want 30? You want 40? You want 60? He said, but before you make the decision, let me just ask you this question. How many people do you know at 16 years old that have $120? Minimum wage was about $180. He paid $2 an hour. He said, how many people do you know making $2, have $120 a week walking around money. And at that, the guy said, or the kid said, okay, put me down for next week. I'll work as many hours as I can. Later, this guy became the younger sales rep for Lipton, a Fortune 100 company, company car, expense account at 19 years old. Was going to school at night at that point. They pulled him out of college and said they'd pay for school at night if he went to work for them during the day. Went on to a successful career with a number of other companies, got engaged. And between the time that he got engaged and 18 months later, he had switched jobs 4 times and doubled his income, and then got married and had a great career with another Fortune 100 company until he decided to buy a business. So he buys this business, and it had been around for 30 years, paid a sizable amount, accumulated quite a bit of debt. Credit was good, so he accumulated quite a bit of debt. And then because he got cheated by the previous owner, there was fraud involved. There were other unforeseen circumstances. The business closed within 3 years. Now this guy is $2 million in debt, no money, ready to foreclose on his house, and decides that since all of this success as a 16-year-old, all the success as a 19-year-old full-time worker, all the success of switching jobs and doubling his income, negotiating for great salaries, he's sending out resumes and he cannot find a job. He can't even get somebody to respond with a no. I mean, absolutely nothing. And facing that, he had a choice. Do I just lay down and just let this happen, let them take my house, go live in my in-laws' basement with 2 kids, 2 little toddlers? Or do I decide to do something? And so what he did is he found a career coach, consultant through the Wall Street Journal back in the day when we did that through newspapers. And after contracting with that, learned a methodology that kind of saved his life in some way, in many ways. Never went bankrupt, never lost the house, continued on, and then created the rest of his career. So that's kind of a somewhat interesting way of me giving you my bio prior to what was just read to you by David, because that guy was me. And to set the tone for what I'm going to talk about today is all those jobs that I had, everything I got through relationships by accident, not on purpose, not a plan. It was totally coincidental, all right? But I was in the right place at the right time, and I wasn't looking. When I got that job for $2 an hour, when they were paying me $1.60, I wasn't looking for that job. They came after me. And what I realized was I had a tremendous amount of experience in accepting jobs, turning down jobs, and negotiating jobs, including those 5 within a year and a half. Switching jobs 4 times. I had a lot of negotiation, a lot of, no, I'm not going to work for you. I have a great job. Okay, they sweeten the deal. Then I go back and then my current employer would sweeten the deal. I'm having fun. I'm thinking I'm at the top of the game. Here's the problem. I had no experience in finding a job because that job in college, that first job in college, I was working for them for the summer. And they came to me and said, we like your work ethic. We want you to work full time. We'll pay for school at night. I did nothing except be who I am. I was in touch with who I am. I was the best version of myself. But what I didn't know was how to find a job. So today, my little angle on this, there's no miracles. There's no magic to the job. And all of you know that. If you guys have been coming to this group and you've been in a career as long as you have, you know that there's no magic. If there was magic, we'd all be buying that magic. But it's basically having a system and understanding the way that finding a job works as opposed to the negotiating and the networking and all of that. And then how do we network to get in front of the decision makers? And so today's topic, as you know from the title, was how to get our friends and family and people close to us to help us in our job search in a very systematic approach, a step-by-step, templated, scripted approach that I believe will work because it worked for me. And since 1992, 29 years ago, when I started, coaching after I was working with this coach, I actually went to work for that company. And I became a consultant and a partner with them. And I did the business development in the beginning until I could work with the PhDs long enough to really learn how to be able to be a coach. And then I did it on the side for so many years until I decided to go into it full time about 7 years ago. And that's when I left the paycheck and went out on my own in Merritt Walsh Associates, as David had said. So I'm going to share my screen and get right into this. It's how to get your friends, family to work for you in your career search. And the best way that I know to start with is a belief system that I'm going to carry through the entire presentation. And everything that we talk about today will really be led back to these 6 beliefs that I'd ask you to, at least for purposes of today, believe them to be true. And then afterwards, we can decide whether they're actually true and will work for you. But the first one is people want what other people want or have. I'm not talking about jealousy. I'm just talking about when someone gets a spa in their backyard, or someone gets a new car, or somebody gets something, a new gadget. We see it, and after time, we start to see that other people have this, other people have this, other people are talking about wanting it, other people are talking about getting it. It starts to get inside us. It's like, well, maybe I want that, you know? And so if you take it into the job market, if you're working and you're successful, and someone goes to the boss and says, hey, you know, Charlie is doing a bang up job and he's like killing us out there. I'd rather have him on my team than work against him. And the boss says, well, let's go recruit him. And the next thing you know, there's a lunch, there's a dinner, there's an offer, there's an acceptance. But Charlie didn't do anything except just do a good job, be the best version of himself, and somebody found him, okay? But what happens when Charlie wants to find a job? That's what we're talking about today. So people want what other people want or have. Everyone wants to buy and no one wants to be sold. We all love to go and buy stuff, especially with other people's money. Here's how I learned that in the nonprofit world. When I worked at the hospital, we would have a big event. People would be prize sponsors. They would send us money and they would say, you go buy the problem. I don't have time to get baskets and hotel rooms and nights and dinners and everything. Here's $1,000. I want to be a gift sponsor. And then we would take $5,000 or $10,000 and I would send some of my committee people out. They were never happier. It was like a vacation day for them. They're shopping, they're buying, and it's with somebody else's money. And they were so excited about coming back. So we all want to buy, but we don't want to be sold. Even when we want something, we go into a retail store. As soon as someone comes up and says, can I help you? We say, no, we're just looking. But guess what? Probably in today's day and age, we're not just looking. Because if we were just looking, we go online. If we decide we want to go in and touch something in a retail store, we know what we want before we walk in that store. But we still say, no, I'm just looking. Why? Because we don't want somebody to sell us something. So as soon as I show up with a resume, I'm selling something. The person switches into judgment mode. They're just psychologically, they have to judge the resume. Is this person a good fit or is this person a bad fit? Does this person have the qualifications or they don't? Do I feel connected to this person from the resume to even have an interview or not? And so those are the kind of things that that happen. And so if you take the retail experience and put it in the job market, it's with a resume or without a resume. Without a resume, you let somebody else buy you. With a resume, you're definitely selling, and that's the tone that you set for whatever meeting, whether it's a networking meeting or an actual interview. The tone is set that the other person is listening to a sales pitch and judging. Even if they call you in for the interview, it's still you're selling and they're the buyer now listening to the presentation. We all love to give advice, especially when we're asked. A lot of people don't like advice when they, you know, they're struggling with something. We want to give them advice. They're like, punch us because, or they want to punch us because they're really struggling. But when we're asked for advice, we all love to give advice. How many of us would turn down advice? Somebody calls and says, hey, I'm looking for a great restaurant to take my wife to for our anniversary. Do you have any suggestions? And somebody, no, I really don't. I don't have time. I'm too busy. In that case, most people will stop what they're doing. Oh, I got the greatest restaurant. Someone turns around and says, hey, I'm thinking of buying a new car. I know you have a whatever it is, a Ford or whatever, and I'm thinking about that. What do you think? You know, I don't want to talk about my car. Let's just move on. No one does that, okay? We love to give advice, but we also don't like to ask for advice because we think it shows weakness. If I go to my boss and ask advice, he thinks I don't know what I'm doing with my job. If I go to a coworker, I leave myself vulnerable. If I go to people who work for me, oh, they're going to think I'm stupid. You'll learn and hopefully learn by the end of this presentation, if you don't already know it, that couldn't be further from the truth. But it is counterintuitive to ask for advice and realizing that when you ask for advice, it actually makes you look stronger. Most of us like our own ideas and we're defensive of unsolicited ones. So our own idea is, hey, I'd like to work with you. Do you have any openings? Person gets defensive. Now they have to, would they fit in? Where would I put them? Why would I hire them? Okay, so there I would say that would be affordability before desirability, right? Affordability before desirability. They're deciding whether they can afford you, not money-wise, but do I want this person in my organization before they even know who you are? Maybe you got introduced through a friend, you networked, and they said, oh yeah, call Charlie. I think he's hiring people. And now you call, and immediately he goes into defense mode because now he's making a decision. But what if you got in front of Charlie and it was having a conversation that had nothing to do with you working for him, but tapping into his knowledge and asking advice? That would certainly make him less defensive of any ideas that you brought up in the meeting, right? And also going back to that one, how many times you've been in a meeting and either you or someone brings up an idea to the boss, and in front of everyone, the boss shoots the idea down, but you're sitting there saying, gee, that was a pretty good idea that they came up with. And then after the meeting, 4 or 5 of you get together and it's like, gee, when Mary made that decision, that suggestion, wasn't that really, yeah, that was, I don't know why. It's because we get defensive. It's almost like if Mary comes up with too many good decisions or too many good suggestions to the meeting, then the boss feels threatened, okay? So the last belief is if you don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there. So I have so many people that even say to me, knowing I'm a career coach, but I'm also a citizen just like the rest of you. I have my circle of friends. I have clubs that I belong to. I have boards that I'm on. I have a house of worship that I'm part of. And people will still come up to me and say, hey, if you hear of anything, let me know. And I'm like, what do you think? Like people just throw things at me all the time? Like about what? Well, I'll do anything. I've yet to come across a decision maker that has a job description for anything or anyone. They always have something specific. So if you don't know where you're going, no one else can really help you go there. So again, counterintuitive, the more narrow, and I tell this to new college grads as well, the more narrow you are in getting advice, the more broad people will make suggestions to you. Hey, did you think about this? So you may go in saying, this is what I want to do. That allows people to know you're focused. And then when you're saying, well, I really want to do this, the decision maker could say, well, we happen to have an opening here. Would you consider going in this direction? And that works really well with people that have experience. And it really worked well recently with a client from Florida who was 60 years old and was convinced that he couldn't find a job because since he didn't have college, he kept his nose clean and worked really hard for this company. In 35 years, he said, I need 5 more years and I'm out. And COVID just killed this company. I mean, everybody. He said his boss was crying letting him go at 35 years with the company, more than this guy was crying himself. He was in shock and the boss was crying. And he was convinced that he couldn't find a job. He's now working. It's a little different. The transferable skills are the same. It's not exactly what he was doing, but he applied his skills to an industry that actually was booming because of COVID. And so by transforming himself, but when he sent resumes, even to that company, they don't even know where they are. But now he's working for that company because he used a different methodology. So if you remember this belief system as we move through, you can see where those psychological phenomenons are applied within the context of my stories and with the templates and the step-by-step approach we're going to take, today. Let me just stop for a second here and see, does anybody have a question or did anything come in so far about the belief system or something that somebody wants to clear up, David?
So there's no question posted, but folks, if you have a question for John on the belief system, there's one right now. So Sam's asking a question. Isn't it that if you don't know where you're going, no road will lead you there?
Well, actually, no, it's any road will lead you there because people, if you don't know where you're going, then if you have no idea where you're going, then any road will lead you. I'll attribute that quote to Alice in Wonderland, and that's kind of where the rabbit hole came from. Because in Alice in Wonderland, there's the quote is actually, well, if you don't know where you're going, then any road will lead you there, because we don't know. And so what happens is we chase rabbit holes because we're not focused, and other people chase the rabbit holes for us. They're well intentioned, but if we're not focused, like if I went to someone and said, hey, do you have a job? I'm a good salesperson. They might have me selling something I have no interest in. And why would I want to sell like pipe fitting stuff and industrial equipment when I'm not handy at all? I've never built anything. I have no idea. I would rather sell something that was more personal. So that's why, even though I started in the clothing business, it was personal to someone. When I got into the hospital world, everything that I sold was personal. All my marketing, all my management was all in personal. It certainly wasn't clinical, but it was in the personal community world of connecting the community, connecting physicians, connecting donors to the healthcare system. So if I don't tell people that, I just tell them, gee, anything in sales would be great, they're going to lead me, and all these roads are going to take me to maybe even job offers. But unless it fits what we like, we're never going to, we have to be good at it, but we also have to like it. So that's kind of why, you know, I mean, if there's another quote out there that says no road will lead you there, I'm sure but it's the same principle anyway.
And Julie is just asking, what was the sixth belief? So maybe just quickly flash back.
Oh, there's 5 there.
Okay. So Julie, if you want to clarify your question, you're welcome to unmute yourself.
So someone wrote a question there. What kept me, when listening to my story, what kept me grounded and when I was going through such turmoil? It really was me believing that I could not do it myself. And, you know, aside from having faith, which, you know, brought me through on a spiritual level, if I did not answer the ad and hire a coach, you know, I had some money put aside when the business failed that I would never touch. I wouldn't have touched it if somebody gave me an opportunity to buy $100 items for $10. That was like, do not touch that money, even if I knew I could turn it into something. I never, ever, ever touched it. And that was what I would at least get my family through for about 3 months after, you know, if anything were to go wrong with the business. Thank God I had the foresight for that. But I took some of that money and actually invested it in this coach. And he took me through the process to where I started to get immediately, because I didn't have time. Within weeks, I was getting people interested in offers right away. And that's how I got into the healthcare world. I had no experience in healthcare. I never even had surgery by the time. I had no surgery up until that time in my 30s, thank God. So I'd never even been in a hospital except to visit people. And I got a job as a VP of sales in a medical management company because I got in front of someone and they got to see me and they liked my transferable skills. And as the doctor said, I'm an egotistical doctor, which may be an oxymoron to begin with. But he said, I know more than I need to know about the medical world. I don't need you for that, but I can't sell like you can. The stories you just told me, that's what I need in my organization, and you can help me. And that's how I got the job. But if I had sent him a resume with a whole bunch of experience with Panasonic, Federated Department Stores, and Lipton Tea, I don't even think the screeners in his office would have, there isn't a high school person that would have matched me to a VP of sales in a medical management company. That person would have thrown the resume out before the doc ever got it. That's what kept me grounded, because immediately I was on a course to success, not taking a course for a year to see if I was going to get a job at the end of the year. I needed a job like now, right now. And it was, you know, it was, and that's why I'm doing what I'm doing today, because I believe in this. You know, I still have a very successful career in the nonprofit world, and I have a career in the for-profit consulting. I'm merging and acquiring businesses for my clients. I'm helping them with strategy. I'm using a lot of the strategy for that, but I still go back to this. And my goal, if you want to know what my goal is, I'd give it all up to just do this full time as soon as I can scale this across the country and be able to do this on a full-time basis. I love it. So let's move along.
Well, there's one more. I'm sorry, John,
sorry.
there is one more question. I think this was in the context of your Alex in Wonderland discussion. You know, if people don't know where they're going. This is from Alex. It says, John, how do you help people that do not know what they want?
Okay, the short answer on that is I tell them to make a list of the things that they like, activities. You know, you could do this yourself. You don't need a coach to do this. And then make a list of things that you're good at. And a lot of times, I would say, if you're really honest with yourself, 75% or more of those are not going to align. I love golf, but I'm not good enough at golf to make money in golf. Now, if I take golf as an industry, then I could make money in golf. I could do sales, marketing, all the things I'm good at. Relationship, I probably could work as a director of activities at a golf resort, because I love golf. I grew up with it. My parents met on the golf course, so we were a golfing family all my whole life. So that would work. But as a golf pro job, I'm good at golf, but I like it, but I'm not good enough to make a living at it. Okay, I'm good at finance, but I don't like finance. So here I am. I'm not that good at golf, but I love golf. I'm good at finance, very good at finance, but I don't like it. I was an accounting major and I dropped it. And people to this day say, well, you're so good with numbers and everything. Yeah, I am, but I don't like to do it all day. So it helps me in my career as a transferable skill, but as a directed skill to do finance all day, no way. So when you start putting the things down, you'll start to find out that, like, if you really like sports, tie what you're good at to sports as an industry, not sports as a job. So sports as an industry, maybe you're not going to play for the Red Sox or the Yankees, but could you get a job in sports marketing? Could you get with an agency that then gets you to somebody who is an agent to then get you to somebody in the front office? And you wind up working for the Giants or the Red Sox or the Rangers. So it's not, sometimes the unthinkable is doable because we've really never thought about it. So the way that I tell people to start with that is you've got to start with what are you good at and what do you like? And then find where those match. Because sometimes you're going to find where you're really good at this and it matches something that you're really good at and you like it. And that's a great place to start, to do that. And that's how people can switch careers. I had one of my earlier clients started as a .com salesperson when .com was first starting back in the early 2000s, and people were just starting to really, it was still 10% of the market. And he just didn't like it. And he said, I really want to be sports marketing. He was a real jock. And, his father was a football coach. He was a wrestling referee. He played sports. He loved it. So he got this great job. He networked, got a job as a marketer in sports marketing. And then he comes back to me 4 years later and he says, I really want to be a teacher. But since my dad was a high school teacher and coach, he always told me stay away from it, but I can't fight it. I got to do it. And then he used it to go into that. Once he really was honest with himself. Now, he knew when he was .com that he wanted to be a teacher. He knew before he took the .com job, before I met him, that he wanted to be a teacher. But to thine own self be true, he was not. And so the first thing is we really have to, with no one else around, with no shame, no blame, just really honest. What are we good at? And what do we really like to do? What could we enjoy spending the rest of our life doing? And then you dial that back. And if you discern well, you'll come to something that's realistic, So.
And how about if that is not marketable? I am a good soccer player, but I love to play trombone, but nobody wants to buy a trombone player. So what do I do?
Well, it depends. I mean, are you good enough to be at the top of your game as a trombone player? Are you in the top 10%? That's what I always tell people.
I'm not in the top 10%.
So then it's a hobby. And I'm a piano player, and some people will even pay me to play piano at certain things, parties and fill in with bands, and I'm good, but I'm nowhere near the top percent. I could never make my living at playing the piano. So for me, I had to agree it's a hobby, but I love it. I'll play the piano every time I pass it in my house. But I know to my own self be true. I know that that's not where I'm going to make my living because I'm not at the top of my game. We all have some place where we at least believe that we're in the top 10%, and then you can start from there. So whether that's being an accountant or an attorney or a customer service rep or a coach, a physical therapist, whatever it is, if you have that background, maybe the environment you're in is not good and you need to switch to a new environment. It's not switching jobs, it's switching environment. So, and we'll get into a little bit of that as we move along through this, but that's a good question. And we will answer that before the end. And if I don't, let's ask it again and we'll come back to that. So let me just look here at the current job market. This is the unfortunate truth about the current job market, and I've tested this with other top-notch career coaches across the country who I follow, and we trade back and forth. We really don't have competitors. There's so many people that need help that we just work it. But we all are in agreement that 90% of job seekers are going after 20% of the published jobs. So, and give or take, let's not argue over whether it's 19% or 70-30 or 80-20, but it's definitely a majority of the jobs opportunities are hidden. And I'm going to tell you where they're hidden. But 20% of the jobs are published. Here's the problem, because it's so easy to apply for jobs today. When I applied for jobs 30 years ago, I had to put a stamp, I had to buy expensive paper, I had to make a budget decision. How much money do I want to spend on resumes this week? Now, not only can you send out thousands of resumes for free online, because everyone's doing it on an online platform, but you can get a service to send them out for you. And I see those come in for clients that I'm helping them hire people. I'm a nonprofit clients, for the nonprofit corporate world, I actually flip the other side and I do recruiting for them. So I see these resumes come in. They are not even close. When I say, I mean not even close to even having transferable skills. Like I'm talking about a new college grad with a physical therapy degree is applying for a CEO job in a mental health facility. That definitely had to be sent by some service that got misguided. There's no way that that person even would have sent it out themselves. So it's too easy. There are so many resumes going out. So 90% of job seekers are just taking that way and figuring, if I send out 1 million, I'm liable to get one interview. However, 10%, the other 10% of the job seekers are going after that 80% using networking, all right? And so I would say that there's a lot better chance of those 10% getting something from the 80% of the opportunities. Now, here's where, if you look at this chart, here's where the other jobs are looking. 20%, give or take. Again, let's not get caught up in the numbers, but give or take a fifth of that is headhunters. People are just automatically call the headhunter. I don't really consider that a published job market, because when I do headhunting, I'm not going out on Indeed. If I could go out on Indeed, so my employer could go out on Indeed without me. I'm targeting people. I'm looking at where they are and I'm calling. You know what they really want? They want somebody doing that job in another company. That's really what they want. They don't want anybody unemployed. They're like, oh, I could send out on Indeed and find unemployed people. I want Joe, who works for my competitor. If you can get him here, I'll pay you handsomely for it. You want a 20% fee? You get Joe, I'll give you 30% of his first year's salary, because I got to have Joe. He'll make me $1 million. A lot of times Joe doesn't want to move for anything because he's loyal to his company, but that's how the recruiters work, the high-end recruiters anyway. I'm not talking about employment agencies. I'm talking about, high-end recruiters. So the employment agencies do the same thing, but they seek a little bit, they're going after a different they publish under different circles, okay? So 20% is headhunters, 20% is inside hires. That means that they either love to hire from within and they push that as a culture, or they ask the people internally, okay, to find people. So I worked for a bank when I was young, early on in my career, short-lived, because as I said, I really didn't like the finance world, but I did get a job with them. And the bank loved, the person who brought me in got a bonus for bringing me in. So that's how I got the job. I didn't apply for the job. The person came after me and said, hey, they pay bounties for us, because the culture of that bank happened to be, if we can't hire from within, then we'll go out and we'll publish something. But let's try to see if anybody knows a family or a friend. And here was their philosophy. You may send someone to another company and hope that it's a good fit. You're probably not going to bring somebody into your own company, take a fee for that, and have them crash and burn. So they felt that the screening of inside recruiting was the way to go. And I found out a lot of companies have that culture, okay? So 20% is there. 20% of the people haven't published it yet. It's somewhere in the system. It's going to get published, but they're thinking about the job. It's on the going into the organizational chart. They haven't gotten around to getting the budget. They're waiting for the fiscal year. It's sitting in this holding pattern. That's another 20%. And then the last 20% is they don't, and this is the most interesting one, they don't even know that they need a particular job until something or someone presents itself. All right, so what's the quote saying that necessity is the mother of invention? So if I walk in front of a physician and I tell that physician that I'm looking for advice on how I can approach other doctors to increase their practice, and tell them that, I can recruit doctors with my sales background, I could recruit doctors like jelly beans, with the Easter Bunny, and tell some stories to that effect, the chances are that doctor may say, well, wait a minute, we're kind of looking at, we really haven't put together anything because we really haven't figured out how we would recruit, but, would you recruit for us? And so sometimes the idea isn't even there until you're in front of them. That's why this networking works so well, because it puts you in front of someone, and it's the reverse of what I said earlier. I said, if there's affordability before desirability, the person becomes very judgmental. This is now desirability before affordability. So in this case, that doctor would say to me, gee, I think I want you to come and recruit docs. We want to grow our practice. Let me talk to the partners. His desirability preceded any affordability. And the more they talk, and the more I have meetings with them, and the more we leave money off the table, the more affordable I become, because the desire keeps getting that. They can see the end result. They can see 10 new doctors. They can see their leverage with the hospital. They can see them treating more patients. They can see better bottom line. And then when we start to talk about negotiating, All those things have been in place, okay? So let me just move here. So here's why the resume isn't working. One, too many applicants. We already kind of covered that. There's so many people out there that just sending out resumes upon resumes upon resumes. And so it just, the screening process is exorbitant, and they're not even using human screeners anymore. It's all artificial intelligence and bots and digital screening tools that are out there, especially for the larger, more profitable companies that can afford that. So chances are your resume is never even hitting a live person. And the other one is there's too much information in the resume. That more is a consequence of when you actually have a live person read it. Because my analogy to too much in the resume is, if you couldn't decide, gentlemen and women, let's use a suit as an example. You're going out in a business suit, both. You want to look your best, and you're deciding between the two. If you couldn't decide between the two and you just said, well, I'm going to wear both, it's really ridiculous, but think about it. So now you've got 2 jackets, 2 pants, 2 skirts, 2 of everything. You would look ridiculous. Well, when I evaluate resumes, and when I have my expert colleagues evaluate resumes, and when I've talked, I'm not a resume writer by any means, I'm not an expert, but I know them. And I've asked them to help me and coach me. And they say the biggest mistake is not typos. The biggest mistake is not the order of things. The biggest mistake is too much information. They're trying to get a job from the resume. They're trying to get a job from the resume. The only reason for a resume is to get an interview. You get jobs from interviews. You don't get jobs from resumes. Even in the COVID world, they still wanted to see you on Zoom. No one ever hired anybody from a resume that I know of. Okay, but still, even if there's one person out there that got hired from a resume, there's millions and millions and millions of people that didn't get hired until they met the decision maker. Okay, I don't want to meet them on their first day when they're signing in and signing up with their paperwork. I want to meet them before. So how do you get a job interview? Is making your resume interesting, not filling it with so much stuff. Okay, so that's why the resume isn't working. You need to stand out. Okay, we know that. Differentiation is so important, and unique benefit to your employer. If in a conversation with someone you can't get across your unique benefit to the employer, okay, then there's no reason for them to hire you. Having a lot of degrees, having a lot of certifications, having a lot of experience, that's all good for the past, but they have their idea of what they're looking for in a candidate. Now, if it's a job interview, then there's a specific interview. There's a narrative that you can perform, okay, a narrative that you can employ, that you can apply, okay, to the conversation that will make you a unique benefit to the employer. But if it's a networking opportunity and you're getting advice from a decision maker, weaving in your unique benefits are only going to help that person get you in the right direction. It's the focus that I was talking about. If you don't know where you're going, any road will lead you there. If you give unique benefits that you have from stories in the past, okay, then that person can get you to the right place. They will know where to send you, as opposed to, let me think about it, okay? And then, are you seen as a potential hire? So now we're starting to slide into the real crux of today, which is the networking, how to use your family, how to use friends. Are you seen as a potential hire? If you get in front of someone and you ask advice, and they by chance happen to have a job for you, okay, did you do a good job at showing them that you could be seen as a potential hire? All right. First thing, know your transferable skills. This is the first step, whether you're going for a job interview, or you're going for a networking meeting, or you're looking for advice. Know your transferable skills. Here are your transferable skills: reliability, team player, flexibility, works well under pressure, meets deadlines. There are hundreds of them, hundreds of transferable skills. These skills go to culture. They don't go to your specific task. Here's specific tasks: forklift skills, chemistry, engineering, certifications. Those are necessary. Those are necessary, but that's not what people want to hear when you talk about your story. They want to know, are you a good fit? More companies are looking to a fit, to the culture, to branding. Will you fit our brand? And years ago, they were worse at it. We're still not there yet, but years ago, most people, 90% of people were hired on their technical skills, their resume, their certifications, the school they went to, where they graduated in their class. And we hired them at these high-level positions for those positions, okay? Even if they were new college grads, that's how we rated it. And a lot of these people crashed and burned. 80, 90% of those people that when they crashed and burned, they weren't crashed and burned because they didn't have the skill, the technical skill. It wasn't because they lied about their degree. It wasn't that they weren't good at what they did. They didn't fit. So the bottom line of that is most people are hired because of their technical skills, and most people are fired because of their transferable skills or lack thereof. All right, that's just a fact. I was given this talk one time live back, prior to COVID, and a gentleman raised his hand and he said, "I disagree." And I said, "Great." He said, "You said 80% of people are fired because it's not a good fit in their attitude and all these transferable skills." I said, "Yeah." He goes, "You're wrong." I said, "Well, let's not." He says, "It's 100%. And I said, "What?" He said, "I'm a managing partner of a law firm." And he said, 100% of our attorneys are fired on attitude. He said, "We do such a great screening job," great in quotes. They're great lawyers. We've fired lawyers that are better lawyers than me, and I'm the managing partner. But they can't fit. They insult people. They harass people. They aggravate clients. They're arrogant. They show up late. They've got all kinds of transferable skill deficiencies." He said, "But being a lawyer," he said, "we've never, ever fired a lawyer because we said, gee, you're just not a good lawyer." And so he said, we have to reevaluate how we do our skills. Okay, so looking at transferable skills, so important. Make a list of those, get comfortable with them. And then you're going to develop stories that demonstrate these skills. Okay, so this is in the step-by-step approach. Is somewhere in those steps, you're going to have to develop stories that demonstrate your skills. Not a listing of skills. It's not like when someone says, "Well, tell me about yourself." "Well, I'm reliable. I show up for work on time. I work well with others. I play well in the sandbox. I like to help other people. I work late. I come in early. I'm always on time. I respect people." They don't want to hear that. That's a line list, okay? They want to hear a story, all right? So show your accomplishments in a story. Here's a psychological phenomenon. Most people will suspend disbelief for the entertainment of a good story. Those same people will suspend belief if they think that you're trying to put one over on them, dazzle them with your brilliance, embarrass them with their lack of knowledge. So if I start throwing a whole lot of quotes out at you, if the tone of my meeting today was not about story, and I just kept throwing statistics out to show you how bad you were doing or whatever, you would start to doubt that because it's like I'm throwing numbers out that you never really thought about. But when I tell you the story, you're willing to listen to the story, and assuming that I'm credible, and I am, but I hope that you trust that I am. Those stories will demonstrate, and you will suspend disbelief instead of trying to doubt me. Like when I say the person, worked for a .com company, you're not going to say, "Well, I bet he was selling vacuum cleaners." And then when I said he wanted to become a sports marketing guy, you didn't say, "Well, I think you really want to be a dentist." Like you're not doubting me along the way. You're so enthralled that you suspend all disbelief for the entertainment of that story. So that at the end of the story, you've listened to it all. Then you can decide what you want to do. But you've at least given me a chance. That's what happens when you're in front of someone and you say, "Gee, that reminds me of a time when," and then you develop a story around the transferable skill, not around that you're a good accountant, not around that you're a good customer service rep, not around the fact that you're a good plumber or contractor. It's around something that was reliable, something you did that shows a transferable skill. And so we're going to get into the way to tell that story, which is a war story. It's an acronym. Okay, I'm just going to stop there for a second and see, do we have anything, David, that maybe I glossed over or whatever?
No, there's no questions. I don't believe there's questions that I missed seeing, but folks, this is another opportunity. John is at a nice break point right now. Please just type the word question in chat and you'll be able to ask John, or type the word question with the question. And so we want to keep this as interactive as possible, and John wants to ask your questions as close as possible to the slide or slides that he's just wrapped up before he moves on. So,
yeah. What I'll do, David, is, and you interrupt me if I forget in my 3 minutes that I'm going to go. I won't now that I've said it. But let me just, if you have any questions, but I'm going to go through the war story because it's an acronym. There's STAR, you have your own acronyms, whatever. But this, I believe, is the only way that a story can be told that will put you in the best light, that will make you affordable, that will make you desirable, and that will take a decision maker to think differently about you. I've proven it with myself when I did it, and I've proven it with clients over 29 years. This is it. And you don't need me or any other coach to do it. You just need the discipline to sit down with your transferable skills and turn them into stories. Here's what it looks like. A work-related situation. Something happened. So I even tell new graduates, did you ever babysit? Yeah. Did anything, oh my God, did anything happen? Babysitters have the absolute best war stories. Babysitters at 29 can actually go back to when they were 16 and say, let me tell you this story, because transferable skills are inherent from 5 to 90 years old. You don't lose them. If you are a natural person who's on time most of the time, you will continue to be on time most of the time. If you are habitually late, no matter how hard you try, no matter how hard you promise, you will be habitually late. You need to work on managing being late. You cannot change yourself to being on time unless you really, really discipline yourself, But the transferable skills come so natural that if you could tell a story about that. So consider the two things that people care about their most, the two people who they always want on speed dial, okay, besides their family, or maybe even in some cases it might be above their family, is who's managing their money and who's watching their kids. That's it. So it's the babysitter and your wealth manager. So if you go out on a date with your wife and you left the kids with a babysitter, you would want to know if there was a crash in the market, and you'd hope that your wealth manager would call you, or if you saw something or heard something on the radio, you want to know that you could call that person immediately and say, what's going on? I got to protect my nest egg. And also you would want to know that everything was fine with your kids. So what better war story than a babysitter? Okay, what better war story than when you work for a business owner whose life depended on your performance and you did something good. There was a work-related situation that happened and you reacted well. So the next step is the action you took, not the action they took. I hear a lot of war stories. I tell people, like, give me a war story. And they tell me a war story. Oh, when I worked here, this was great. And then my boss wound up getting promoted, and I got promoted, and I had like 15 people, working for me. I got a raise. That's how I was able to put my kids to school. That's a great story, but it's a pat on the back. It's like a check. It's like a clap for you. There's no benefit to the organization or to someone else. It has to be other-centered. Obviously, we benefit in the end, but the war story isn't told psychologically like this. So this is what happened when I was working at Lipton. The salesman who I was supposed to help when I was in the summer, helping him, I'm only a summer employee, I'm 19 years old, and he didn't show up. It was before cell phones. And I had to, I called the office and they said, big mistake, drive home, go home. There's nothing for you to do today because we had you tied up with Joe all day. And call your boss tonight and he'll tell you where to go tomorrow. So I thought about it and I hung up the phone. And as I was ready to walk out the store, I said, wait a minute, I could do this. So I walked into the aisle and I asked the guys and I said, hey, could you help me do this store set? Because I've never done it before. They said, absolutely. So I went to the manager, I introduced myself, I handed him a card. We didn't have badges back then, no IDs, but I handed him a card that said I was a merchandising specialist, which meant I was a college kid. And at the end of the day, after I did the set and everything, I went up to the boss, the store manager, and I said, I'm out here on Long Island, 2 hours away. I said, I'm not heading back in the traffic, it's summertime. I said, is there anything else I can do while I'm here? I said, you want to see the aisle? We walked down to the aisle, he looked, and he said, you sure? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, that whole pile of cardboard that you guys put down there from all the stuff you packed out the shelf looks beautiful. He said, I could put this in a newspaper ad if I wanted to. But he said, would you throw that in the compactor? I said, absolutely. So what they told me in the morning was when I left to come home 2 hours and not work that day, but get paid for it, they said, tell the manager and apologize, because if he thinks we didn't show as Lipton and every other tea company showed up to do a reset on a store aisle, we're in trouble. The VP will call him tomorrow and apologize, but we are so sorry, please do that for us. I know you're only 19, just do it. Instead, I turned it into an opportunity for me to set the store. We showed up, the store didn't care whether my boss was there or not. They didn't even know, who my boss was. We were just doing resets, right? So I did a good job. I asked advice, okay, from the people next to me. I said, hey, what do I do now? And they were happy to help the kid, And at the end, they called Lipton and said, hey, we have this card here from this merchandise specialist. You guys are great. You hire these merchandise specialists to do these store setups. And I think it's great what you do. And I'm going to recommend that other companies do it too. So the VP made a call that next morning to me and said, get in my office. And I thought I did something wrong. And that's when he said to me, we want you to work full time for us. And we'll pay for school at night. And so all those things that I did that were right were inherent transferable skills. I knew how to work hard. I knew that my father didn't train me to go home and get paid for days that I didn't work. So I used my head and said, this isn't rocket science. It's cleaning shelves and putting boxes of tea on there. I could do that. I was on the job 3 weeks already. I knew I did three weeks of setups with other bosses, you know. And so by me doing that, I used my transferable skills and I used advice to get people to make me look good. But when I lost my job, okay, 15 years later, I didn't know how to ask advice. I didn't know how to do it. It happened by accident. What I'm hopefully teaching you today is do this on purpose. And all those things that have been happening by accident for you, I'll bet every one of you on this call has done at least one of these things. Nothing here is rocket science. I don't know that there's anything here that every one of you would say in a group, if I gave a survey, I've never heard that before. You've heard it all, but not in a step-by-step approach when you need it to happen for yourself, okay? So anything on that, on war stories or, you know, transferable skills as opposed to technical skills?
So a couple questions came up. One is from Mandy. She agrees with you on the resume not getting you hired, but if you don't have enough keywords in the resume, the applicant tracking system won't screen you in for an interview. How do you handle this?
The way you handle it is you've got to get advice on your resume, and there's plenty of online opportunities. There are resume coaches. I am not a resume coach at all. I don't do it. I recommend local people to other people that do resumes. Clearly, keywords have to be on there. And if I didn't use the word keyword, but I did say that the bots and the AI are not picking up keywords in the resume, but having too much information in there. So what I'm saying is if the keywords, if there were 20 keywords, even if there were 30 keywords, there's plenty of room to put 30 keywords in without wearing 2 suits to the interview. So you've really got to scale down. If you have a choice, rather than wear both outfits, you've got to say this keyword is more important in the resume than this little accomplishment down here that we can always cover in the interview. So I thank you for asking that question, because let me really clarify. In today's world of actually applying for jobs that are available and you're qualified for, yes, the keywords have to be there, and in some cases they have to be in the right place. One study I looked at where they took resume reviewers and they put the artificial intelligence glasses on them, and they tracked their eyeballs where they went. The first place that they went was to the obviously to the name, and they went to that paragraph, whatever you want to call that opening paragraph. They went to that. That's kind of like the executive summary. That's the cheat sheet. That's the cliff notes. You know, that's the preview to the movie. Okay, so that's a very important piece in there. And then people went to the bottom. We don't know what they were looking for in the bottom, and maybe the study did come out with that, but they looked at the bottom to see some of the interesting things: accomplishments, certifications, clubs, see if there was synergy, okay, to see if, do they belong to a club that I belong to? They're in the Lions Club. Oh, I'm in the Lions Club. Oh, they go to Rotary. Oh, I go to Rotary. You know, oh, they went to this college. I went to that college. So they went below, and then they went back up. So their eyes went here, then back up. Knowing that from an expert, and these experts have like hundreds of other hacks and tips that could help all of us. Since I never got a job with a resume, because my first job was Lipton, and then from there I just jettisoned, and people hired me right out of college, and then people recruited me to places. I never got a job with a resume, and the first time I sent out a resume in my life was when I sent it out after my business failed, and that didn't go too well. The next job I got was not with a resume. The next job was not with a resume. I'm 64 years old today. I have never gotten a job with a resume, including the job at the hospital. I weaseled my way into the hospital using transferable skills and getting advice from someone who said to me, you've got to talk to the CFO. And when I talked to the CFO, he said, I've got to have you talk to the president. And they hired me. And then HR said to me, can you send me a resume I needed for the file? So I just put something together and I sent it to them. All right. So I'm not a good person to talk about resumes because my whole career has been without a resume. Okay. But there are jobs that are published. Somebody's going to get them. The 20% that are published, someone's going to get them. And I hope it's you. Keywords are very, very important. Don't clutter it. That's what I was trying to say, is don't have too much information in the resume, but you have to have the keywords in there, and really spend time, whether you get a resume coach or not, or you go online and get some tips. Make sure that opening paragraph, I don't care if it's called executive summary, I don't care what you call it, people's eyes are going to that opening paragraph that kind of describes, who you are. Make that interesting. Make that differential. Make it what somebody would say, I want to read the rest of the resume now, or I want to call this person in for an interview, or I want to put them in the plus column when the next resume I'm going to put over in the negative column.
So we have a few more questions lined up. One is from Jim. Maybe I missed it, but besides headhunters and not yet published jobs, where is the hidden job market?
The hidden job market is getting in front of people who haven't even thought about the job yet. In other words, the hidden job market is when I got in front of a doctor one time asking advice about merger and acquisition, and I told him that I was actually going to be talking to some doctors about acquiring docs, and I wanted to kind of get the landscape from him. He then said, well, wait a minute, could you do that for me? All right. When I was selling spots in a surgery center to doctors who could not only do their surgery in the surgery center, but own a piece of it, I didn't go to a doc and say, hey, do you want to own a surgery center? Because I was going to get met with a whole lot of, no, not for me. I'm with the hospital. Affordability before desirability. I went to them and said, hey, doc, can I get your advice? What? I just want to talk to you about, my new, role in the surgery center company. Oh, sure. And I went in, I said, do you know any docs? This is what I'm doing. Do you have any advice for me? Are there any people I can talk to? And he was like, yeah, call this doc, call it. Tell him I told you to call them. That was good. So now I'm moving along the line. And then he says, I might be interested. I said, really? He said, yeah, I wasn't interested when you called me. If you called me and you were going to make a sales pitch to me, I wouldn't even be meeting you here in Starbucks. But he said, I came to Starbucks to give you advice. So the hidden job market is all these jobs that are out there. Even if they're published, you get in front of a decision maker, you're going to come in the back door by somebody saying, hey, boss, I know you're hiring, but I just met this guy the other day. He was asking me advice about this stuff. He's going to be talking to our competitors, and he's got some interviews lined up. I think we got to talk to him. Oh, and then it's wanting someone that someone else wants. So this is a whole step-by-step. And again, I'm going to get to the step-by-step. We're going to get to the script, but the script isn't going to make any sense if I didn't set it up to what the job market looks like right now.
Okay, thank you. Funby has a question. What do you advise if one has foreign work-related accomplishments that are transferable? How can this be effectively presented?
Foreign acquired?
So the question is foreign work-related accomplishments. What do you advise if someone has foreign work-related accomplishments that are transferable? How can this be effectively presented?
It gets effectively presented in the war story. We're in a global market, and I'm coaching a woman now that came from Ukraine, and she was getting a job with a German company here in the United States. And she started targeting companies that were European, even though they weren't Ukrainian. She doesn't speak German, but they wanted someone here. She lives in the United States now, but all of her skills were acquired in Germany. In Ukraine. And so working here in the United States, we turned her war stories and just made them global. Again, since it's transferable, it will transfer from the moon. Okay, if they're truly transferable. And so people who have degrees and have experience with companies in foreign companies, even if it's an American company that isn't even thinking today about going global, you don't know that they might be interested in having you join them, because way back in their mind, they're thinking, maybe we could, with this global market, maybe we should be selling in Europe, but I don't have anybody. They might just see you in a non-threatening way. You're meeting them, you're having a conversation about transferable skills, about war stories. They might even lead with, gee, I'd love to have you come and work with me. Do you think you could help us? Do you have any contacts in over in foreign, wherever you're from, Asia or South America, Europe, wherever you're from? You don't know where that conversation is going. So my advice for the transferable skills is don't worry about where they came from. If it's a work-related situation, if you took action and the result was positive on your company, they will translate that into, if you could do that for them, you could do it for me. And it doesn't matter where that company is, anywhere in the United States, anywhere in the world. It's more about them looking at that. A reverse example of that is I was helping out with my church career group, and this older German woman had worked for Volkswagen, who's headquartered in northern New Jersey, was headquartered here, and they were very prestigious headquarters at the time. And pretty much everybody knew somebody that worked at Volkswagen because they were right here in our county. And this woman was now unemployed, and she was going out, and she had a great track record, and she had a great time with Volkswagen. And I said to her, well, what kind of stories are you telling when you're out there? Oh, I got great stories. Every story went like this. Well, when I worked for the region for Volkswagen, I did such a good job, and my boss was, kind of lazy, that the divisional chief promoted me, and I wound up getting my boss's job, and then I did a really good job there for 5 years, and then they brought me up into the region from the district, and when I was working up there, I realized that my boss didn't know what he was doing, and all I did was keep my nose clean. I did my job. I just kept going, and next thing you know, they saw me as really good. They fired him, and I got his job. So even though that's true, all right, the result on the organization was not positive. So maybe I need to change the slide. Instead of saying result on the organization in a positive way, I said to this woman, do you realize what you're doing? And she said, what? I said, you're telling people, a decision maker, when you're networking, you're telling them that you got your last 2 bosses fired, and that's your greatest accomplishment. What do you think they're translating it? All of a sudden, she went white. Her face changed completely. And she said, oh my, I got it. Like the dawn dawned. 3 weeks later, she had 2 offers from her networking. The job market was actually really good at this time. This was a good job market that I was helping them out. This was in the go-go 80s before things kind of crashed in 90. And it was definitely a buyer's market. But she couldn't get any traction. She had more interviews. Like, here's the thing. People say, I need help. Why? I need help on my resume. Why? Well, I keep getting all these interviews. I'm not getting the job. I said, you don't need any help with your resume. You need help with your interviewing. She was getting all of these interviews. That's why she was discouraged. She wasn't getting discouraged. People saw that resume. It was brilliant. The resume was brilliant. So people at least wanted to know, how did this woman go 25 years with Volkswagen, and she still got 10, 15 years in her. She was only 45 or 50. She started right out of school, and she was German too, which was great for her, but raised here in the United States. So again, it's the perception. All right, so the result has to be positive. Her result was very negative. All of a sudden, she started to get offers because all those interviews, she started to change her tune when they said, tell me about yourself. Or when she heard something in the interview from them, she said, oh, this is a chance to throw in a good war story. And she threw a good war story in that kind of sank her, okay?
Okay, couple more questions. Denise is asking, how do you find a reputable resume coach or writer, as it is so subjective?
Yeah, that's one I'm really, my greatest credibility here is going to tell you that I don't have that answer. And part of it is because I never, I've not had experience, as I said myself, and the people who I coach are looking to come in the back door. The people who I specialize in are people who are not staying in their lane. Okay, so as an example, someone who has been an accountant for 25 years, they lay them off in a downsizing, and the boss was a jerk, and the managing partners all had an implosion, and it was no fault of their own. And now after 25 years, they're gone, but they love accounting. There's enough keywords in the resume to send it out, and people are going to see accountant 25 years. They probably know that firm imploded, which is a great opportunity. That person's going to get plenty of interviews. They're going to get a job. They don't need you, me. They don't need a networking. They don't need anything because they're in a straight line. All right. The keywords are natural there. We don't even have to know about it. The problem is that what happens when that accountant says to me, John, my resume is not going anywhere. Okay, tell me about it. Well, I want to work in nonprofit as a CFO. I know I could do it. Our firm did so much nonprofit work. It was great, but I never worked for a nonprofit. I was on a couple of boards, but I know I could do it, but I'm not getting anywhere. I'm in 6 months. And I don't want to quit my job without having a job, but I'm going nowhere. So this person has a job, but the resume is getting thrown out because what did they think? What did they say? Look for nonprofit experience. Look for nonprofit. Look for the word CFO. There was no CFO even in a keyword. And even if CFO came up with a keyword, as soon as they looked at it, he wasn't a CFO. Okay, he was a CPA that never worked as a CFO. But knowing the nonprofit world, this guy could be. He is classic to be a great CFO for a nonprofit, because a lot of nonprofits hire CFOs like that, CPAs rather, that were CPAs. So my experience and my expertise is in people that want to switch jobs, want to switch careers, want to switch the lane. So their resume, even a well-written resume, is not going to help them. How is that guy with a great resume going to get a job as a CFO if he just keeps sending them out as a CPA? But if he gets in front of decision makers asking advice at a nonprofit to find out the challenges that a nonprofit has. There's the CEO is liable to say, whoa, my friend Pete is at another nonprofit. I had lunch with him last week. He's looking for a CFO. I want to recommend you right over there. Because it was non-threatening, just having lunch, just learning about it, saying that that's where you're going, okay? So, and I'm gonna get into that. The next step is we're gonna get into actually templating what a script would look like, and then when you get this handout, you're gonna have all the tools necessary. You don't need anybody except yourself and discipline to be able to, at least give it a shot and try to prove me wrong. But this has been successful for people for 29 years, so I'm praying that it's successful for you as well. We okay to move on, David?
Well, there are two more questions.
Okay.
This one may also be as the script that you're going to present in a moment, but Nella's asking, for a financial advisor / sales resume in the financial industry, could you provide an example of what could make you stand out in the opening paragraph? And if that's an upcoming slide or so, that's fine.
Well, it's not because, again, if I would have had to completely retool this presentation and probably bring in someone to do the resume. If we were talking about how to go into the published job market with a resume and take it through and cut through and whatever. So I wouldn't do that, but I can tell you that what belongs in the opening paragraph is what is going to differentiate yourself, what is going to make you different. So as an example, years ago when I was working with the other firm, and I was, as I said, I went from being a client of theirs to being a partner because I grasped this so well and was so successful that they asked me to come on and work with them. So here's one of the things that we told. A guy had on his resume that he did an internship at Disney when he was in college. Now we're going back a ways, so he was in his early 30s, but it was still on his resume. And we said, gee, what did you do there? And he said, well, actually, he says, I was goofy. I dressed up as a character. Now, if you did an internship at Disney and you were in finance, or you swept up around the exhibits, or you took tickets on a line, or you drove a cart around and emptied the trash cans, that's still interesting. That's still great, okay? But you're goofy. How many people were goofy at Disney World? Probably only one, because if there's too many goofies around, the 3-year-olds are going to get confused. So there's like that one goofy that kind of hangs out in that park. Maybe each park has a goofy, but there's only one goofy. So we said, well, in the opening paragraph, put, I was goofy at Disney World, okay? We told him to test it. The next interviews that he got from sending out the resume, every single person led with, before we go on, could you just tell me what it's like underground at Disney? The whole conversation was about Disney. He controlled the interview because it never got to tell me about yourself, because he was telling them about himself while he was there. And then he was using his experience at Disney to show how it helped him in these other jobs in his 20s, because he was like 31 now, And so, again, he used something in the opening paragraph. So what differentiates that? If it just says, I'm a highly intelligent salesperson with financial skills working in some of the best companies, that's not going to win it for anybody. So I would take what sets you apart, what makes you different. If you said something like in there, an example of my financial strength is, an example of an accomplishment that I had is. And that would catch my attention. And then if I wanted to know your line list of skills and, a summary of what you do, I'll go down the line. But I really can't tell you what would be in that opening paragraph. I think, I know that resume writers, certainly know what that is. And so I apologize that I can't really help with the resume, because that's not where my success or my client's success has been.
So we do have one more resume question, then we will move on. This is from Amit. It seems you need 2 kinds of resumes to get an interview. One with more focus on keywords to get past the ATS to increase the chance of an interview, and then focus more on transferable skills. And the other for people you are networking through, not recruiters, that focuses more on transferable skills. Both require war stories. What are your thoughts?
My thoughts are, and this will come up in the script, is when you're networking, do not have the resume with you. Do not carry it in. Do not have it in the car. Do not be tempted to refer to the resume. If you get in front of someone, the resume is history. It's done. Okay, because if you're networking with someone and you're asking for advice, if you're not looking for a job, they have no right to ask for the resume up front. If they say, gee, this is really interesting, could you send me your resume? Absolutely, I'll email it to you as soon as I get out of here, and you can email it right from the car. And I don't care what the resume is at that point. You could have typos in there. You could be missing the opening paragraph. You could have too much. It could be 12 pages. Doesn't matter. They already have a desire about you. They already made their first impression from you. The resume is insignificant. But I will say you do have to, and I did not give this advice 20 years ago. 20 years ago, the rule among all of us was one resume, stick to it, go with it. We had no bots. We had no artificial intelligence. It was expensive. People weren't getting thousands of resumes. People were getting tens of resumes and maybe hundreds. They could look at all the resumes. The curious boss could really tell the screeners, yeah, you can screen them, but like, I want to really see all the resumes. I'm curious. Nobody can be curious. We can't afford to be curious today with thousands, hundreds of thousands of resumes coming in, okay? So, so today, you need to tailor your resume where you're sending it, especially if you have different backgrounds, okay? So if you have like 3 career backgrounds that are somewhat related and you are going after one of them, you have to highlight and forefront that one. No matter how, I don't care how you do it, whether you bold it, if it's third in the column, or you change, and instead of having it be chronological, you just put it in topical form. You know, again, I'm not an expert at the different things you do, but you do need to tailor the resume for the job because, you know, I tailor my prospectus when I'm sending it out. If I'm proposing to a doctor's group that I'm going to help them, you know, sell the practice to a private equity firm, my resume is certainly going to have career on it because I want it to be on it. I want them to see some of the other nonprofits I work with, but it's going to be highly leveraged with and expanded with what I've done for doctors. If I'm going after a nonprofit client and I'm going after Meals on Wheels, or I'm looking at a Habitat for Humanity client, I'm going to have that all front loaded with my experience in nonprofits, and I'm going to have that I also do those other things. The reason I don't want those things not on there is I don't want to hide them. Credibility is so important. I don't want to hide them. I'm not going to focus on it. But if they go on my LinkedIn profile and see it, they're going to be, well, wait a minute, why is he hiding that? I want them to see that it's there, but my primary experience in this scope is nonprofits, and that's what I put front and center. Okay.
Great, thank you. Let's move on. I know you got some more great information.
Good. So you make a list of your helpful contacts. This is your family, your sphere of influence, okay? And you want to set up a meeting with them. All right. You're going to show them that we talked about having, you know, your list of transferable skills. That's how you're going to get your war stories. But you're going to show them a list of jobs and industries that you're exploring. This is totally exploratory. You can stretch a little bit. You can get outside the box. Just make sure that when you put down the things you're good at and the things that you like, that you put on the list only the ones that are in both lists. Because if I would have put Golf Pro on the list, people would just laugh at me. You know, but if I put director of golf marketing at a resort, they would say, oh yeah, I know you, John, you love golf and you're a great marketer. Gee, that makes sense. I never would have thought about that about you, but boy, that's great. You put something you like together with something you're good at, took your marketing and your golf. Wow, that's brilliant, okay? So show them a list of these job industries that you're exploring. The list could be on a piece of paper, handwritten. It could be typed out. It doesn't matter. These are your friends. When you have this meeting, you can show up in a t-shirt and sandals. It doesn't matter, because they're your friends. You're not asking for a job. You're not asking them to send you to somebody for a job. You're not asking them to help you meet with somebody about a job. All you're looking for is to get to decision makers, to ask them about advice, totally about advice, about these things you're exploring, all right? So ask to meet these decision makers who can give you advice, not give you a job. You're seeking advice about the industry's hot issues, not how to do the job. Not how to do the job, okay? So I worked for a hospital for 13 years. I dealt with hospitals for the past 25 years in many capacities, as a consultant, as a vendor, as a supplier, okay? So I know the hospital world pretty well. If I decided that I wanted to give all this up and go back into administration in a hospital, I'm confident that I could find a job there. If I sent my resume and I'm more than 10 years out of a hospital executive, I don't care how I doctor up my resume, I'm not getting in there with the resume. It's not happening. I'm a realist. Let's claim it. I'm claiming it. I'm not getting it. All right. But if I went to a couple of hospital CEOs that I happen to know through the vendoring, through the consulting, through the recruiting that I've done for hospitals and helping them, you know, hire people, you know, because I understand their world. Okay. They would meet with me. And if I said, here's my advice, I'm thinking of getting back into this thing. No, I'm not asking you for a job. That's why I'm coming here. That's why I'm in a golf shirt and slacks. I have my note paper. That's all I have with me. but I'd like to know, I need to know today. I'm good. You look at, and then I weave in. I've stayed up on top of hospital administration, and I know all about the new payer system, and I understand where the the Affordable Care Act is going, and I understand merger and acquisition, but I know that I can help some hospitals that are not as well placed as yours. But I need some advice on what are the biggest challenges? What keeps you up at night today? Now, July the 9th, not what I learned last week, not what I knew 10 years ago, today. And I've had people stop and look and say, wow, that's a great question. And I have the answer for you. And then they tell me stuff. They tell me stuff and I take notes. Okay. Then I go to the next person because another sphere of influence. These are my sphere of influence. They'll talk to me. Okay. And I ask them the same question. And they might tell me two of the same things that the other person told me, but I'm going to get maybe 2 or 3 more new ones. Not that they weren't important to the other guy, but I only asked them for a few. I didn't say, let's have a whole diatribe. Let's sit down and have a conference about all the things that keep you up. I want to know what first comes to your mind, because what first comes to your mind, that's what's most important. By the time I get to the third person and they give me their 2 or 3, I now regurgitate the first 2. Hey, what about this? Do you see this? Oh, yeah, that's a challenge. Wow, you did your homework. Well, what about this? Do you see this? Okay. Now, one of my other questions you're going to ask is about the hot issues is, how did you solve that challenge? It's only 2 questions. What are the biggest challenges and how do you solve them? When they tell me how to solve them, and I ask this third sphere of influence person that is an expert in the field, and I say to them, well, how do you what are you doing to solve that? Well, gee, it's kind of on our to-do list. I said, well, you might want to think of this. And I've had them say to me, wow, and my clients have had that same experience, and they've come back to me and said, wow, a young college grad, parents just spent 60 to 42, over 280 when you include $280,000 at Georgetown about 5 years ago. And they said, if we spend $280,000 at Georgetown, we can afford a career coach for a couple of $1,000. So I coached this guy, and he went out and asked a whole bunch of friends, went to his dad, found people in the banking world. He wanted to be in finance. He was very focused. He only wanted to do commercial, real estate, finance. Hey, focus. So when he told these guys at the banks, they were high-level people. His dad had belonged to a country club, knew all these guys. And they met with him for advice. He went in a golf shirt and shorts. It was summertime right after he graduated. And he was talking to them about an interview that was coming up, on campus. This was his junior year, by the way, not when he graduated. He was looking, he had already done his internship. It's the end of the summer. He's looking for a job now. He's ready to go. And these 3 guys gave him at least 2 or 3 each of the biggest challenges. And when he got their 8 or 9, 10 challenges, when you add them all up, there were 6 that were unique, and there were 4 that were duplicates. So obviously he knew that was the hot spot, the 4, not the 6. So when he went on an on-campus interview with Wells Fargo, and the guy said, do you have any questions? He says, yeah. He says, what are the biggest challenges I'm going to face when I'm working? We went over the script. When I'm working for Wells Fargo, let's project. What are my biggest challenges in the industry? What am I going to be facing when I go and do that? And the guy looked at him and said, you're my 14th interview out of 16 today. And he said, no one's asked that question before. He said, but I can tell you what you're going to face. And he went on, he said this and this. And those 2 were spot on, right with what they were in his wheelhouse of the 10 he got. And then he says to the guy, what about this? What about this? What about this? Here's differentiation. Here's setting himself apart from those other 14, right? So they said, he's like, yeah, those, wow, hey, you did your homework, okay? I don't have to tell you how it ended up. He wound up getting the job at Wells Fargo, okay? So it was not magic. He did all the work. He had to execute. I couldn't be there with him to do it. All I did was help him write his script. I helped him focus. I helped him get this script down like I'm telling you now. 2 questions. Do you have any questions for me? Yes. What are the greatest challenges? What are you doing to overcome them? What are you guys doing to overcome them that I'm going to face when I'm there? How can I be part of this team? He projected himself already in the job psychologically. He didn't say, well, what do you do to do that? He didn't say, well, what are the biggest challenges that keep you up at night? If I were, let's say I'm working there, what are the biggest challenges I'm going to face when I'm there? Wow. Okay. So ask about the challenges and ask how they're overcoming the challenges. That's it. That's it. If you do that well, that conversation could go anywhere from 5 minutes to half an hour, according to recent clients. People will really get into that And now you get a chance to weave in your war stories. So here's the template. This is what it looks like. This is how it all gets together. You must create or establish chemistry, rapport, and credibility in the first few minutes when you're talking to the decision maker. So this is after you've gone to your sphere of influence and you say, hey, do you know anybody that's the head of an accounting firm because I'm thinking of going to be an accountant? Do you know anybody that's a landscape architect because I want to apply my marketing skills to when I used to be an architect? I used to be a landscaper in high school, and I think I could really have a lot of fun using my sales and marketing working for a landscape design company. Do you know anybody? Everybody knows somebody there, because if they don't know the landscape architect, they know the architect who hires a landscape architect, they know the builder that uses the landscape architect, or they know a friend or neighbor that's just used a landscape architect to put a pool in the backyard. So it's not that hard, and people that have trouble with that, any good coach can help you through it if you wanted to coach. But if not, just think about it. Use this, ask friends. They all know people in places. They're all happy to introduce you, especially if you're not looking for a job, especially if you're not looking for them to get you to a job. Don't make that mistake. Don't go to your next door neighbor who's a good friend and say, I want somebody in landscape design. He says, oh, I know somebody. And he calls them up and says, hey, my friend's looking for a job in landscape design. What do you think the friend's going to say? I'm really not hiring right now, so don't waste your time. But if he says to the friend, hey, I got my next door neighbor, just graduated school. He's looking, for a job in landscape design, but not from you. He has a couple of meetings coming up he's networking with family and friends, but he just wants to just get some advice about the industry. You think that guy's going to say, I don't have any advice for you? No, he's going to say, come on over. Come on over. Send him over to me. I'll give him advice. I got advice. Why? Because no one's asking him for advice. Right? His wife's not coming to him for advice. His kids aren't coming to him for advice. His workers aren't coming to advice because it may show weakness, even though it's not weakness, but they think it's weakness. So he's not being bombarded with asking for advice. He's being asked to borrow money. He's being asked to buy stuff, but he's not being asked for advice. So you're not a bother, but you're not going to get it by cold calling that guy. You're not going to be able to call up the local landscape design guy and say, hey, I just graduated college. Can I come over for some advice? He's going to be like, he doesn't even take the call. You're never even going to get to ask the question. But if you went to someone to get you there, that's why sphere of influence, close contacts is so important in this. Okay, so you've got to get them talking in the first few minutes when you get to the decision maker. Because if you get to this guy and he turns around and says, well, tell me about yourself. What do you want to know? And I start asking the questions. Okay, the first question you want to ask to get them talking about themselves. Okay, and the best way to get them to talk about themselves is, how did you ever get started in landscape design? The whole reason is to get them talking so you can relax, and it gives you a platform to put your war stories in. Because what you don't want is it to become question and answer. You don't want him or her to say to you, so how can I help you? What advice do you want? Well, what are the biggest challenges? And then he starts right into that. You don't know anything about him or her. They don't know anything about you. You have no platform to tell your war stories. You can't say, well, before you start, I've got about 15 war stories. Let me just throw them out at you. What you do is you ask them, how did you get started in this industry? And they will tell you. And usually their story is so, they love to tell their story. We all love to tell our story. They want to tell their story. In it will be accomplishments, challenges, things. There'll be their own war stories in their story. This is how I was working for this guy, and he was a jerk, and then I got this job with this guy, and then I went over here, and then this happened, and then the economy did this, and then this other guy was starting this company. He came after me. I met this guy at a golf outing, and then they're telling you the whole story. Throughout it, you make it a conversation. You weave your war stories. Gee, that's so interesting. I had a situation just like that. I did this, and then this happened, and I did this, and the result was the company wound up increasing sales by 20%. Anyway, so you were saying, and now you're just having a conversation, and you're weaving it. At the end, if the person didn't bring up a bunch of challenges, that's when you say, hey, what are some of the challenges in the industry? How are you solving them? Thanks so much. Now, what you've learned there is you've learned a lot about the industry. You've learned a lot about them. You've shared your war stories. You've told them that you're on a mission to get a job, not from them, but you're on a mission to get a job. You showed up and dressed casual. You didn't have your resume, so you were credible, all right? And the person has 3 ways they can go. Thanks a lot, good luck, and you never talk to them again. They could say, you know what? I'm not hiring right now, but I like what I see here. And my buddy is, we're not really competitors. He does something different a little bit, but it's marketing and it's in the landscape world. Would you be interested in talking to him? Absolutely. Even if you don't want to work for them, talk to them, because you'll learn more challenges and more solutions to the challenge. Okay. So That's how this goes. That's how the template goes. That's how we use our center of influence to help us get to decision makers. When I started this, I went to my accountant, who was also a friend. So he was in my sphere of influence, but I also saw him a lot. We played golf together. We went to school together, and he became my accountant. Okay. I went to him with my list of industries. I was looking at sports marketing. I was looking at environment, use my marketing skills in the environment. I was looking at energy, to use my marketing skills and sales skills in energy. At this time, now I'm 35 years old. I just lost the business, trying to get my feet back. I went after the hot industries. Telecommunications, communications, internet was just starting, right? The environment was hot. It still is. Energy was hot. It still is. And healthcare. He told me, my coach told me in 1992 that healthcare would be hotter in 20 years than it is today. And he was not only wrong, he was right, because it not only was hotter 20 years, it was actually hotter 30 years. It's hotter today than it was 20 years ago, 10 years ago. Okay, so it was hot. So those are the industries. I started exploring. I went to the accountant. I tell you, you don't have to believe me, but he gave me 8 contacts. One person gave me 8 contacts, because he went to his clients that were in healthcare. He went to a client that was in energy. He went to one of his clients was in the environmental business. They did they took asbestos out. That got me to the consultants. It got me to laboratories. In healthcare, I started with a hip and knee replacement company, which then got me to a PR firm that he worked with that did medical PR. The PR company got me to a medical management company doing workers' comp, and that's how I got my first job as a VP of sales in the healthcare world, being a VP of sales for a workers' comp management company. Transferable skills. I knew about workers' comp claims that were really high in industries. I knew how to sell. I knew how to hire salespeople as a VP of sales. And I had a doctor that taught me everything I needed to know about the medical part. Okay, but he would never have got me through the resume, as I said earlier on. So get them talking. Here's the thing: unless it's an actual interview, leave the resume at home. All right. So if you haven't experienced this already, try it. And especially young people, but it works with us old people as well. We go through that informational interview and we show up dressed like we're going to the prom, and we have 5 copies of our resume under our arm. The person then says, "Can I have a copy of the resume?" They give you a copy of the resume. I've had people tell me this, and I do it myself. If a kid comes in with a resume from their dad who knows me, they just graduated college, I make that meeting 15 minutes tops, and I'm done. If they come in without a resume, and they're truly looking for my advice, I'll spend an hour with the kid. I will spend an hour with the person. All right. And I've had people tell me that they literally throw the person out of the office, because the guy said to me, he listened to one of my presentations because he was, I've done this in the corporate setting for the flip side to teach people who are hiring what to look for in people. Right. And so what he said to me afterwards was, he said, I get asked all the time. He said, I'm a banker and I know a lot of people, and everybody's kid wants to come in. And he said, if they come in, first thing I do is I ask them for a resume. And when they give me the resume, I said, this isn't an information interview. He said, I throw them right out. Sometimes I tell them that, and sometimes I just make it easy. If it's a good friend, I don't embarrass the kid. I just say, something came up, give me a call, and I let them go. Because I don't want somebody coming to me, telling me it's an information interview, and they're coming with a resume. They really want a job from me. Okay, that's why you don't have the resume. That's why whether you're 60 or 16, you show up casual, but neat. Okay. Dress casual but neat. Don't, I'm not going to show up in shorts and t-shirt. Not happening. But I will show up in a golf shirt and khakis and have a note, and definitely have note paper. I want to take notes, but no resume. And guys will actually test these kids. And I had some kids, I did a college webinar for only college kids geared toward them. Every kid raised his hand and said, wow, I made that mistake, because I had somebody ask me for a resume right off the bat, and he says, you're not really looking for networking, you're just looking for a job. He said, now I know why it didn't go well. So credibility, rapport, and chemistry. First thing in credibility, everything's got to be honest. Be honest. Tell them why you're there. Rapport, the only way you're going to build rapport is if you get the other person talking first. And then the chemistry is going to come from you sharing your story back with them. So you open your interview with a question, get them talking first, weave in your war story conversation. End with questions about challenges in the industry. That's the whole template. That's the secret sauce. That's the magic to this, if you pardon my pun of using magic or the word magic, but we know it's not magic, but this is what people have found to be successful. They've taken their whole life and said, my biggest problem is I haven't been able to put it into a step-by-step approach. All right. So I've seen houses being built. I'm not that handy, but I wouldn't even know where to start. But a good architect and a good builder could take me through the steps And if I wanted to build a dollhouse for my granddaughter, they would be able to, if they gave me a step-by-step and I was diligent, I could at least do a halfway good job. But without them, I wouldn't even know where to start. So in review, and then we'll get to as many questions as you guys want. The resume is not your friend. So it's okay to use the resume to go out, but the odds are stacked against us. I'm an odds player. I'm a gambler. I'm a risk taker. So I always go where the odds are. I'm always going to go where the odds are best. Okay, so I would rather buy a couple of raffle tickets in a 50 limited $100 raffle where I'm only going to be one of 50 than to buy a lottery ticket for $1 billion when I have like a greater chance of being hit by lightning. So I'm an odds guy. So the resume is not your friend. It's okay to send out the resumes, but have a realistic expectation. Know that if you call your accountant, your attorney, a friend, somebody who you are in a club with, a house of worship with, and they care about you, and you tell them you're just looking for advice and that you're on this mission to change careers or to advance your career or to switch jobs, whatever it is, you're only looking for advice about the industry, so you're better prepared for these meetings that are coming up. And you are going to have meetings coming up because you're going to have another meeting from another networking person. Don't use the word interview. Interviews are only related to someone that calls you and says, I want you to come in for an interview. That's when we go into interview mode. And then you still, we don't have time maybe today to go into it, but, the whole interview process is amazing and magical in itself, that you can create some magic there. In the interview process, if you can start out by saying, gee, that somebody says, oh, you have some coffee, do you want water, are you okay, did you find us okay, problem parking, the small talk. Before they say, so tell me about yourself. I see you worked here. Tell me about what it was like when you worked there. Before that happens, if you can do this, it works. Trust me, it works. Try it. Gee, Julie, before we get started, I was coming in here and I was thinking, how did you ever get started in this? Did you always want to be and even if it's a recruiter, you could say, did you always want to work for, a .com company? Did you always want to work for IBM? Did you always want to work in the banking industry? And they'll always have a story. It'll either be, yeah, I was the person who wanted to be the banker at Monopoly when I was 10, and here I am in banking. Or, you've got to be kidding me. I didn't even want to go to a bank. I'm the worst in finance. I kind of come in the back door through marketing, and someone said, do you want a job there? Let me tell you how it, and all of a sudden you got them talking about themselves. Very few people, if any, I haven't come across any, but I always like to say, there's going to be somebody that's going to say, you know what, this isn't about me. I only have 15 minutes for you, so let's get into it. I would question, do I want to work for a company like that? That's really not interested in getting to know each other. I made it through this process. We're now having this face-to-face, and they want to make it so dry that they don't even want to tell me about their life. If you can get to, if it's a decision maker you're talking to, if it's a hiring manager you're talking to, they will always tell you about themselves. They will always have that story. So you might have to be careful if it's an HR person. You might not get them to talk a little bit about it, but you want to create rapport with them as well, because they're the ones making the decision to get to the hiring manager. Okay, so the resume is not our friend. You have to create unique value to your employer. That's done in the opening paragraph of a resume. It's done in the opening comments when you ask them to speak, when you say, tell me, can you tell me, how did you ever get started in this industry? Did you always want to be a landscape architect? Get them talking first. This is not your friends in your sphere of influence. You don't have to get them talking first. They're meeting you at Starbucks in the backyard, grabbing a cup of coffee. If you don't know them that well, they're not going to get you to their friends and their circle of influence as experts. So don't circumvent this and try to go to someone you met once because you think that they know a lot of people in high places. They're not even going to take your call. These are people like when I made my calls, I called 5 people, including my accountant. Every one of them took my call. Every one of them had a meeting with me within a day. Every one of them. I was heading in the right direction with my list. There are people who don't go in the right direction with their list, but you got to go in the right direction with your list. Go to your friends. Go to people who are unemployed. They know people in high places. Go to people that are retired. Go to people who never worked. I know stay-at-home moms that have more experience than I have, and they're only 40 because they decided to raise their kids. They had a bunch of kids. They wanted to be a mom, but they were met leadership positions in the women's club, the home and school association, the baseball program, the football program, the scouts. They have more management experience and more interpersonal relation experience than I will ever have. And I love when they come to me and say, I don't have any experience, but now that my kids are in school, I want to get into the workforce, but I really haven't worked since right out of college and before I had kids. And I said, you have the best story to tell. You have the most unique value to the employer. And then we build a narrative around that. Her resume is not going to get her the job, but boy, can she get in front of people when she starts talking about the Women's Club and the League of Women Voters and all the other nonprofits that these people work for, and men too. But I'm just highlighting women especially. I worked for some strong women in my career, and some of the best leaders that I worked for were women. And so a lot of people that, I was way ahead of the curve in understanding that, okay, because I worked in industries that were strong with women. At Federated Department Stores, we had 300 executives in New York that ran all of our department stores in the country. We had 128,000 employees. And merchandising-wise, there were 300 of us, from secretaries to the president. But we were in a division that ran merchandising and logistics for everything, okay? We were 240 women and 60 men out of 300, okay? The head of the men's division was a woman, okay? So when I love coaching women who are getting back into the workforce after taking time off for whatever reason, taking care of a sick a mother, and they took 5 or 6 years off while they were caring for them, and now they want to get back in. Great story. Horrible resume. Great story and unique value to the employer. Okay, know your transferable skills. Compassion is a great transferable skill. Imagine taking time off from your career to take care of an elderly relative because family is important to you. Transferable skill. And if the person across the desk doesn't see that as a unique value, I don't want to work for them. If they would say, I'm not taking care of anybody, I got my own career to worry about. Okay? So become comfortable with your narrative. Whatever that narrative is, be comfortable with it. Get comfortable with your war stories. You don't have to learn and memorize war stories. You have to learn and know your transferable skills. Because in the middle of a conversation, a new transferable skill will come that will trigger a war story. If you try to memorize 10 war stories, I promise you, the opportunity for a war story will be number 11 that you didn't prepare for. But if you're prepared with your unique value and your transferable skills, the stories will just come. It will just come. So when you get comfortable with your narrative, that'll be your success. Always be seeking advice. I still seek advice. I mean, it's scary sometimes when I use this in my corporate world. And I go to people and ask for their advice, and then they wind up sending me to other people to get more advice. And sometimes they even buy what I'm selling because I'm not asking them directly. If I call up a nonprofit and say to them, I'm a consultant, I can raise you millions of dollars and it won't cost you that much, I'll never get past the gatekeeper. People are too busy for that. But if I call up someone and I say, hey, I'd like to get some advice about my presentation, and would you run through this? Okay, I did this with a college. I went to a college that I had a connection to. I said, would you review this for college students? I have some meetings coming up with other colleges, which I did. I actually had 2 colleges, and I didn't want to go in there cold. I wanted advice because I don't know the college market. So this college career director, VP of career development at the college, listened to my presentation, saw it, made a couple of comments tweaked it for the college kids, and said, you've got to meet the dean. And I said, what do you mean? We want this here. I said, really? She goes, absolutely. We can hire you. We want you to do this here. If I call them up, even with the connections, that I want to pitch you on this, no. I even asked her that. I said, can I ask you a question? I said, I wasn't really looking for anything here. But I said, if I called you up, she said, I didn't know how good this was. I just thought you were I don't have time for that. I have time for this. So she said, I kind of like the fact that you got here, you're asking my advice. I hope my advice was helpful. She was happy to give me the advice, okay? Always be seeking advice and get them talking first. That's the key. If you walk into an interview for a real job and you can't get them talking first, you lower your odds by 50% that you're going to get further on. 40%, 60%, roughly 50%. You can increase your odds by 50% if you can get them talking first about themselves, not about the market, not about the weather, not about the Yankees or the Red Sox, about themselves. And the best question is, hey, did you always want to be? How did you get started in this industry? Is this something you always wanted? And ask it almost as a matter of fact. Like I was thinking of this as I walked in, and I was just wondering, and get them talking first. It will help you. Okay. And so, just really quick, this is not a sales pitch, but you may know somebody that's not going to be able to do this with a PowerPoint, and they look for coaching. They're the people who go to the gym and want a personal trainer. They're the people who hire sales coaches when they were in business, and now they're looking for a job and they kind of like the idea of having a coach. What I give to people is, transferable skills development, crafting their war stories, personal script development, really honing in on their circle of influence, industry experts, how to do scripting that, which is that's your decision makers, and then personalized narratives, getting comfortable with the interview and negotiating the offer. So that's kind of what I do for my clients. It's a career investment. Senior executive packages are $10,000. Private middle management coaching is $5,000. Recent grads is $3,000. I'm going to take that off the screen. You're going to get it. This is not a hard pay. This is, as I said, people want to buy. They don't want to be sold. This is about buying. Okay. A young girl just decided she's being coached by me, and she decided she wanted to get out of teaching at 27 because of the politics, but she doesn't want to stop teaching. She wants to get out of the education system, in the public school education system in New Jersey. I believe she's going to get back into it when she's a little more mature, but she's really good at what she does. She wants to be in early childhood development, and she wants to have a side hustle teaching yoga and mindfulness to students in middle school. Very focused. So she wants to do, as a consultant, she's doing early childhood development, especially special ed teacher with a master's degree. She wants to help. She was helping master's degree teaching. She was doing that. The politics just got to her. She was doing more politics than she was teaching kids. So she went to her superintendent in an exit interview and took an opportunity to say to them, here's what I'm thinking of doing with mindfulness, and here's the reason why, and here's why I'm good at it. Here's my unique ability. Do you know if there are any superintendents that I could talk to get some more advice about that? Because this is where I'm going to focus my side hustle, and if I can do it, I'll do it full time. But at 27, I don't have any delusions of grandeur. I'm going to be working for this consultant doing, because I helped her get a job as a consultant doing early childhood development, early intervention at 3 to 5 year olds before they get into the school system. And the superintendent said, wow, I want you here for that. We've been talking about doing yoga and mindfulness. It's been the buzzword, and it's the mindfulness new buzzword. So she called me up and she said, you're not going to believe this, but I used your technique in my exit interview, and the district hired me back to do this as a consultant. I don't have to do the politics. I just get to do what I love, and they pay me. And then I got 3 calls from 3 of her colleagues that said, okay, I need help. So I don't need to sell this. I'm not selling it. But if you know anybody that would want it, tell them to call me. I'm leaving this up on the screen. You'll get this anyway, but there's my my email address and my phone number, and we'll take it from there. I'm going to stop sharing, and I hope that it was helpful. I know we still have a few minutes for some questions.
Yeah, thanks, John. Yeah, so we do have a couple of questions that are still queued up. And, well, you'll be uninterested to know that soon we'll turn off the microphone and have open discussion outside the meeting. Earlier, you said, gee, that was interesting discussion. We should have kept the mic on. I mean, the recording on. So, but Sam has a question. What are your thoughts on the use of a one-page marketing document?
I love it. Differentiates yourself. It might not do well in an official job that's being posted, and you're responding to the job, because remember, there's a difference in selling and buying. Okay, if you send a beautiful letter with a one-piece marketing to someone, like we call it bird dogging, you're just sending it out unsolicited to someone who you feel you would be able to work for the company, the one-page marketing is so much better than a resume. So I agree with that. But I will caution you, if it's an actual job request, they're going to want it in a format that they want it in. So I don't know. You could try it. It can't hurt, but it definitely will work if you're deciding to go after companies without using this networking that I'm talking about, and you just want to pick 5 companies in your area that you think you'd want to work for, and you send this beautiful letter to a name you got somehow, and it starts out with, something like, I want to work for your company, and I gave you a one-page marketing. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you. I mean, if you did something like that, that's certainly different. You're not giving them 4 paragraphs. You're giving them 1 line. I want to work for your company. Okay. That's kind of like I was goofy at Disney World. It captured their interest. I want to work for your company. Here's my 1-pager. I might call somebody back from that. So yeah, I'm a big fan of the 1-pager. I tell all my clients on the business side, because sometimes I get a client that then says to me, I don't really want a job. I want to increase my side hustle, or I want to form my own business, or I want to go out on my own. I actually help them with that. The 1-page marketing is that's key. Without that 1 page, they really can't grow their business. But anyway, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And I can tell you, I've been goofy at Disney World, but I wasn't wearing a suit.
Haven't we all?
Yeah. Karen has a question. What do you do when a company has had various job openings over time and you have many experiences, and so the resumes will vary? The emphasis varies on the resume.
So repeat that question, because I just want to get it right.
So yeah, what do you do when a company has had various openings over time and you have had many experiences, and so the resume will vary?
Yeah, I would make this is a good assumption to have, that no one's talking to anybody inside. So to your point, if you were applying for a job in May in this division, and then that same company had a job that you have this transferable skills for in a different division in June, and you apply over there, I'm telling you, they're getting so many resumes and no one's talking to each other about that. And so I would stick to the philosophy of make sure that you tailor it to each of those and highlight your unique value and your unique skills in those each areas. Because if you have 100 transferable skills or 50 transferable skills, you've got to highlight the ones that are uniquely important to your future employer. And so that's where the differentiation comes in. That's where narrowing down, that's where not wearing 2 business suits or wearing 2 ties to an interview because you can't decide between the ties. Better off wearing any of them than wearing 2, right? So that's one way that you do it. Quick example of that, of where the resume is. And I'll go quickly through this, and if somebody wants to stay on later and they want to talk about it or whatever, but this is a really unique, exciting opportunity that I was involved in. Got referred to me by another person who was coached by me, and she comes in as a 32-year-old attorney, hotshot attorney, on the partner track, working 60, 70, 80 hours a week, no vacations, but realizing she doesn't even have time to go on a dating app, much less have a date. And she decides this is not for me. But she worked in the banking world. She was a counsel, big firm in the city with 1,500 lawyers, and she was working in the banking industry. And she'd say to the bankers, well, how about Friday? Oh, no, we're off on Fridays in the summer. Oh, okay. And then she said, well, how about, can we meet next week? Oh, no, I'm on 2 weeks vacation. So what do you mean? Well, we have this compliance thing, so they send us away for 2 weeks, and then they go through our stuff. But they also want us to be relaxed and rejuvenated. She's like, I haven't heard those 2 words in my firm. So she quit. She decided, I'm out. She didn't quit, but she said, I'm out of here. So she comes to me and says, I know what I want. I want to work for one of these banks. And she said, I applied to Morgan Stanley and I applied to JP Morgan, and I got these 2 rejection letters back. And she said, I know I'm perfectly positioned there. They hired me to help them. I could do their jobs. I know I could do it. I know that I could work inside, but I get these rejections. I said, okay, do you know anybody there besides HR? She goes, yeah, I know all these people. I said, do you trust them? She goes, yeah. Tell them that you're considering leaving the firm and going into banking. You'd like their advice. So she called a decision maker, somebody, a VP that she dealt with in the legal department, a lawyer, VP lawyer. And she said, hey, Annie, can I talk to you? I said, sure. So they have a conversation. She goes through the whole script, tells her what she's looking for, says, I'm just looking for advice. What are the biggest challenges I'm going to face on your side? Yeah, I work with you, but I don't know what it's like to work for the bank. I think it's great, but what is it like? They have this whole conversation. She says, we would love to have you work here. I said, what do you mean? She goes on the computer, said, oh, we have these job opportunities. She said, let me get HR. She calls HR. HR says, yes, send me the resume. So then she sends them. She had no resume with her. They actually asked her, and she said, no, I'm not looking for a job from here. I just want a job. I have some meetings coming up. And she actually had a meeting set up with JP Morgan. She was at Morgan Stanley. She goes over to JP Morgan, and she does the same thing with them. Same line, same narrative. At the end, they say, well, why don't you work for us? Bye. They go, oh, we have these job opportunities here. She says, oh, wow, that's interesting. Yeah. So she says, well, that's great. And she did say to them, well, I'm not looking for a job from you. I actually have another meeting at JP Morgan. She mentioned JP Morgan to Morgan Stanley, and she mentioned Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan. That created, I want what other people want. She had no offers from those other 2, but she thought that they would want her. So therefore, they wanted her even more. Okay, it means she's serious. She's not kicking the tires. Has nothing else to do today, but maybe she's dreaming about working. She has a plan. She had her plan. Her narrative was her plan. Long story short, they both made her offers. After she had the offers, she said to HR, could you just explain to something? She said, she was in there talking to the one. She said, I got this rejection letter. Oh yeah, she said, do you know how many thousands of resumes? So we just sent a rejection letter out to everybody. So we can't even get ahead of ourselves. We don't even know. Sometimes we go back to them, but she said it's a mess here. It's a mess here. This is recent. This isn't 20 years ago. This is recent. Okay, the resumes are flying. All right, so she got 2 offers. Okay, from both of them, using networking, not using a resume. Highly qualified, legal degree. Here's the reason why. So she said, well, could you tell me specifically why I was rejected? They looked at it and said, oh yeah, you never worked for a bank before. First screening is, if you didn't work for a bank, we're not interested. With 1,000 resumes, we'll take our chances if somebody worked at a bank. And then the hiring manager said, well, I'm hiring you because you know more about what we need to do inside this department of the bank. But we have no other way to get to you that except that you walked in this door, because we are going to continue to reject everyone that never worked for a bank. When we get 1,000 resumes, we get 5 resumes, we're going to have to look at everybody, because then slim pickings. But we don't see that coming anytime soon. So that's the answer on why you have to tweak the resume and why the resume is not as helpful and why it hurts us. So anyway.
So John, thank you so much. Clearly for everyone on the call today, a real wealth of information, and so generous with your time. So thank you so much. You know, and this last story really showed, whether it's 80%, 70%, that's how you uncover the hidden job market. That was a very real example of uncovering the hidden job market. So stories like that and the template that you offer can really help others learn how to get past gatekeepers and uncover the hidden job market. And I also like that you talked about some resumes have too much info, and the need to create an interesting and targeted resume for that opportunity or that person, that decision maker you're trying to get in front of. So those are a couple takeaways that I heard today, that among many of them, that were just very valuable. So thank you so much,
David. Let me just throw this out because I'm very passionate about what I do here, and so I'll just tell you this. And I've offered this other places, and the ones that take me up on it, I've enjoyed. Most people don't take me up on it, so don't think I'm being slammed with this. If you have a cancellation, if you have a meeting that you're going to split into like 2 areas where you have somebody that's going to do like an hour and you're looking to fill the other hour, or if you want to do a separate private go-to meeting with people that are interested and offer it as an added thing, and you just want me to come with no agenda, with no slides, and just have discussion and follow up on what we're talking about here, as long as we can find a mutual, acceptable time. And actual Fridays at 10 o'clock is good for me, because I never schedule anything for Fridays. They're my emergencies. So chances are, a good chance that I would be available, where like Tuesdays at 10 o'clock is never going to happen. So I could do it at night. I could do it at 8 o'clock in the morning. I could do it anytime if you guys want to do it. And it would be strictly your agenda and me just responding. And we could work together like a workshop, and we can put things together. We could really take off the boxing gloves and make it work. So I'm happy to do that. If you want, you just let me know. You know where to find me.
Terrific. Well, that's a very generous offer. We've had panel discussions before, and different sort of open format discussions, town hall style. So it sounds like that would be a lot more flexible. And then this way, the participants ask the questions that they have on their mind, rather than just the agenda of the presentation topic. So great. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So folks, as we wrap up, just want to let you know what's going on over the next couple of weeks. Starting next week is July 16th. A topic that kind of flows from John's is next week, Michael Goldberg will be here, knockout approaches to virtual networking. So getting in front of people and being effective. And since there's still a lot of virtual networking and virtual meetings, I think it'll be just terrific. I've seen Michael's presentation on knockout networking. He's modified it for virtual as well, so we'll get to participate. So that's the 16th. The following week, July 23rd, Deborah Wheatman will be here. She'll be back and talking about salary negotiations. And someone wanted to know about resume coach. Deborah is also someone who specializes in resume prep, so you may want to get to meet her and see if she may be helpful or is someone you can associate yourself with. Other groups that are meeting tomorrow morning, the Breakfast Club of New Jersey will be meeting. It's 8 o'clock in the morning, so you'll be getting up early. TheBreakfastClubNJ.com, TheBreakfastClubNJ.com has the connection info. Colleen Ferrari from Employment Tutors, get the interview. So that's what she'll be talking about. So visit the breakfastclubnj.com website. Also, every Tuesday evening at 7:30 in the evening, New Jersey Job Seekers, of course, meets virtually, and you can find the Zoom meeting link on our PSG LinkedIn group. It's the same link they use every week. And also feel free to visit our cousin organizations, PSG of Central New Jersey, that's psgcnj.biz. They meet Monday mornings at 10:30, and PSG of Morris County, which is psgmc.org. They meet Wednesdays at 9:30 a.m. So plenty of places to get great advice. So once again, folks, thank you so much for joining us. Thanks again, John, for being a presenter today and giving us such valuable information. And until we get to see you very soon, whether in person or virtually, I'll simply say, bye, everyone.